whole purpose of taking a sleeping medication is to help your brain actually sleep. But what we see is that the medications make you think you're sleeping. They're a little bit like a light anesthesia. But when you look at what the brain's doing, it's not true sleep. So that is the main problem with using sleeping medications.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast episode of the Sleep Like a Boss podcast. I'm Anika Carroll, your host, and we're going to talk about a really important subject today, and that is sleep meds and why they often not work and what we can do instead. And I have an expert with me, neurologist trained in Stanford, Dr. Barrett. I'm so excited to have her and welcome her in a minute. And she really focuses on migraines right now, helps people get off pills so they can get to the issue of their problem and heal it and feel better. And she did a very interesting TEDx talk in 2023, which was about the limitation of prescription medications and what we've learned about the hidden causes of headaches. And she is somebody who's using prescription medication sometimes with patients. And I want to really dive in that with her, and we're going to dissect that and see if that's a good idea, when that might be a good idea, when it's not a good idea, and how we can help people feel better, specifically with the focus on sleep. So welcome, Dr. Barrett, to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And I just want to say, I really love the audience that you've cultivated here of people who are interested in improving sleep, people who understand that sleep is important. So I think that's awesome. There are so many people out there who don't even think that sleep matters. So yay to your tribe for being on board with trying to improve sleep. It's one of the best things we can do for our health.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. To me, it's fundamental, right? If we don't sleep well, everything else goes out the window.
Yeah.
But yet there are still so many people who struggle. And when they go to the doctor and mention that concern and say, you know what, I'm basically here because I'm either super fatigued and I know I'm not sleeping well, often the doctor says, you're stressed, and here's prescription medication, and we'll see if it gets better. And a lot of people don't get better with it, either being it because the meds are not working or because they don't really feel refreshed after using them. And then this can go on into long-term prescription processes with trying different medications and it's a real journey I see a lot of people really struggling with. And before we dive into that a little more, tell us a little bit about your background, because like you are somebody who is in the Western medicine field, you're trained in it, but you have taken a different approach a bit over the past few years.
Well, I think it's because I have practiced mainstream medicine for so long. And what happened for me is really just this extreme frustration at the limitations of what medications can do.
Mm-hmm.
So probably 10 years ago, I was in my office with one of my absolute favorite patients. She worked so hard to get rid of her migraine. She took all her medications exactly as she was supposed to. She did all the lifestyle things that Dr. Google recommends. I mean, she was really trying, and I respected that. And she came in. She was not doing well. She was really struggling. She was spending a day a week in bed, maybe two. Her husband was having to pick up the slack. She felt bad about that. She was worried about her job. I mean, she was in a tough spot. And, we had tried a dozen medications at this point, right? So we talk everything over. We come up with, medication number 13 or whatever it was. And, I'm handing her the prescription for the medication. And she looks me right in the eyes and she says, "Do you think this is going to work?" And I said, yeah, I do. And what I realized is that I lied. I didn't think that medication was going to be the magic wand that None of the other medications was. And I think in that moment, I really realized I can't do this anymore. I can't just be a pill pusher. All I've ever wanted to do is be a doctor and help people. And all I'm doing is offering her something to temporarily mask the symptoms. I am not helping her heal. And so for me, that really changed my whole approach to health and wellness, to healing, to helping people recover from their migraines and other types of headaches instead of just cover them up.
Wow. And I think this is such a powerful experience. And I'm so glad you listened to your body saying, you know, no, we're not doing this anymore. This doesn't feel right. Because I think it's just so important that we have people I think in Western medicine who've gone through that system and have tried things and are seeing there is limitations and step into that functional space as well and can combine both and can actually, you understand both sides. You understand the medical system and you understand the functional system, and you can combine them and really help people to get to the base of things. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's what we all want, is true healing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, to encourage people, it's possible. And does it require work? Yes, you were saying that's what your patient was doing. She was doing the lifestyle stuff too, right? She was not just taking the pills. Because at least from what I've seen and listening to you speak, it sounds like that too. Like, unfortunately, nobody has found that magic pill for every ill. It just doesn't, it's just hasn't been developed, because we would all be in a great state if that was the case, right? It's just not there. And I think sleeping pills for most people often feel like that resort and maybe hopefully magic wand.
Right,
And,
right. But I think it's like so many other areas of health. A pill can be fine as a short-term solution. You know, if you are dealing with a significant trauma or loss in your life, sure, that can be helpful for, you know, a week or two. But it is absolutely not a solution to a long-term chronic problem, like so many of our pills aren't. They don't have the benefit that we wish that they had. And really, the answers to long-term health problems are, you know, changes in how you live, which is harder. It's much harder to do. It's also more effective and far more rewarding to live from a place of true health and wellness. But in a short run, I can understand how people might reach for something short term. But I just think we need to keep our eyes on, you know, 95% of the problem, which is sleep problems are usually a long-term problem.
absolutely, I agree. And I totally agree with that. And this is not to like judge or shame or do anything for people who are taking sleeping pills. It's, yes, I also totally agree. And sometimes they might even help in the short term to calm the person down and to help them through that period, right? But then we need to help work on the longer term ability for the body to feel safe and to go back to sleep. And whatever stressors are being thrown at that system at that point are preventing the body from helping, right? And that Band-Aid is just doing that job temporarily, but we just cannot, the body doesn't operate like that for long periods of time anyhow under so much stress, right?
I love how you say that, help the body feel safe. That's beautiful.
Because I think in the end, that's what it is. It's cortisol. It's sort of like, right? Cortisol is always part of the picture, and cortisol is our stress hormone. And if it's too high, we can't fall asleep, whatever might be causing that, right? If it's anxiety, if it's physical thing. And then the night wakings often too. It's a raise for whatever reason, cortisol comes up, adrenaline comes. And if we can get that under control, then it's that, oh, the body can let go. And then we go off to snoozing, which is all we want, right?
Yeah. Should
we dive into this a little? Should we go into what kind of meds are out there? What have you seen being used? Maybe what have you used with people? Do you see anything that is working?
Yeah, so there are a couple main classes of medications that have been used historically. Let's divide it into three types of medication. So there are medications like zolpidem, brand name Ambien, which is a hypnotic. There are medications like temazepam, brand name Restoril, which are benzodiazepines. And then there's sort of a hodgepodge of other medications like amitriptyline or trazodone that we are typically using when we're trying to treat pain or something like that in addition to the sleep. So let's just break those down one by one. The hypnotics like zolpidem basically work by sort of shutting off the frontal lobes. It's a little bit like anesthesia. It really is. Itty bitty tiny doses, safe doses, of course, but that is really what they're doing. The second class of medications, benzodiazepines, are working on what's called the GABA receptors in the brain. It's the same receptors that alcohol hits. It's the same receptors that GABA drugs hit. And these are great for managing anxiety, again, sort of shutting off your higher centers of yourself. The trouble with these is that they're addicting. They really are. These are cousins of Valium. And I think we've all heard the stories of Valium and the epidemics of people who have been prescribed Valium and related medications to calm them down. And, then they end up addicted to them. So I think we can just kind of X out this entire category of medications, honestly, just don't go there. And then the hodgepodge medications. I use a lot of these as a neurologist because I'm helping people with pain disorders. So amitriptyline can be useful. Trazodone can be useful. That's not as helpful for pain disorders, but these are medications that often are in the antidepressant class of medications. Although we are typically not using them for the mood disorders, nobody can tolerate them in high enough doses to actually get a mood benefit. The newer medications, SSRIs like Paxil, Prozac, SNRIs like Cymbalta are much, much better for helping with mood. But in the past, these are medications that we had used to kind of kill two birds with one stone. So what we've learned, unfortunately, over the years is a little bit more about the complications of these medications. So what they've done is they did studies where they put electrodes on people's brains, right? Just like for an EEG. And they monitor the brain activity of people at night when they're taking these medications. And unfortunately, what happens is that these medications alter the electrical activity of the brain at night. Now, you might be thinking, who cares, right? What do I care what my brain is doing while I'm sleeping? Well, actually, you care a lot because the brain goes through very specific stages of sleep throughout the night. We've got stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, REM sleep. And the brain really has to go through those stages, this very particular 90-minute cycle of stages of sleep of different kinds of electrical activity. Because there are really important things happening during each of those different stages. There are different purposes. And if you interfere with that electrical activity, then the brain can't do what it needs to do while you're sleeping. And that's not helping you. The whole purpose of taking a sleeping medication is to help your brain actually sleep. But what we see is that the medications make you think you're sleeping. They're a little bit like a light anesthesia, but when you look at what the brain's doing, it's not true sleep. So that is the main problem with using sleeping medications.
Yes, and I think this is so important because I think for people, it's when you take that pill, you have that hope, but you're hoping for that safety blanket that, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to close my eyes and I don't have this. I'm staring at the clock. I'm staring at the ceiling. I'm not awake. Yes, you might not be alert in that sense, but you're also not going through deep sleep and through REM sleep. And can we dive a bit into that? Why is that? Why do we need sleep? I know we talk about it, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, why are these stages? Why is this so important? Why do we not want to mess ideally with sleep medications with that?
Yeah, it's how the brain takes care of itself. Sleep is how the brain gets things done that it can't do while you're awake and alert. So I would say that two of the most important things are cleaning out the brain. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to say three, not just two. Cleaning out the brain, consolidating memory, and emotional processing. So cleaning out the brain, literally within my career as a neurologist, we have discovered how the brain cleans itself out. This is absolutely fascinating. It is called the glymphatic system. And what it does, it essentially washes the brain out. It removes things that need to come out of the brain. And the most important of those is beta amyloid. Beta amyloid is what accumulates in the brain to cause Alzheimer's. None of us wants that, right? So if you lose out on your chance every night to clean beta amyloid out of your system, what's going to happen? That beta amyloid is going to accumulate and Alzheimer's could be the result. So every night you get a chance to prevent Alzheimer's disease. And if you take a sleeping pill, it shuts down your glymphatics and prevents your brain from doing that.
Can we and I know this might, and some people might be like, this is too much, but while I have you and you know how this works, like, how does the body do that? I'm always fascinated. I find the human body is just one miracle operating system, but how does the brain actually do that?
Oh, it is incredible. Okay, so I remember learning this at a conference, maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they showed a video of this happening in the brain. It is the coolest thing. So what happens is that the brain makes these giant electrical waves during the deeper stages of sleep. When we're awake, the waves are kind of like this, sort of short and choppy and irregular. During sleep, they get really big. You know what that electrical signal does? It creates waves, like a wave pool that you take your kids to, and it makes the waves and you play and you jump. That electrical activity in your brain essentially does the same thing. It makes like a wave pool in your brain. And that is what propagates the fluid through so that it can just wash your brain clean. It's like cleaning out a dirty sponge, kind of like that, and it just takes all of the trash out with it. So it's really the trash truck of your brain, but it's this beautiful system. Obviously, it took a long time to develop the scientific tools to be able to monitor this and see it happening. But it is just beautiful when you see it on, literally a camera image of how the brain does this.
Wow. And because we don't, and now we're taking a sleeping pill, and when we take a sleeping pill, we do not do the waves, basically the waves don't become so big.
Exactly. You shut off the electrical activity. It doesn't happen. And then so there's nothing to generate the waves to make that fluid wash through your brain and take away all the trash, including the beta amyloid that accumulates in Alzheimer's.
Wow. And is there certain sleep stages where the waves are cleaning out more than others?
Deeper stages of sleep. So this is what we call deep sleep. Anybody who has an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or an Oura Ring, there's so many different devices that monitor stages of sleep. What you're looking for is deep sleep. Those are the stages of sleep where those electrical waves are happening. And that is the part of the sleep cycle that you want to focus on the most. Yes, total number of hours matters also, but the more deep sleep you get, the more brain cleaning you get. So that's the parameter you really want to track.
Awesome. And is there something, because I know, and I have clients who use sleep trackers, and I have clients where we don't use sleep trackers because they can often cause anxiety, and then that's a bit counterproductive. But is there a percentage or an hour number that you were targeting with people for the deep sleep numbers?
Not so much. I usually go on the principle, the more the better.
Okay.
So, for example, if you try something new, let's say you try a new supplement, you might take your average amount of deep sleep over the past week, you try your new supplement for a week, you track your amount of deep sleep and see if it got better.
Okay, so we're looking for trends, right? We're looking for improving. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
matter if I start with 20 minutes of deep sleep and my partner is at 2 hours, we're not benchmarking against the 2 hours, we're benchmarking against the 20 minutes. And we want to slowly start improving that, right? Because that's all we can
Love that.
realistically
Yeah.
work on, I think.
Yes, absolutely. It's not pass fail. It's you getting better in your own body and your own health.
Okay.
So there are two other things that the brain is doing during sleep that is important also. One is memory consolidation. So they've done really interesting studies showing that if you sleep 6 hours a night instead of 8, that it actually worsens your short-term memory. So we know that learning is highly dependent on sleep. So we call that memory consolidation. It just means it's basically being transferred from your flash drive to your hard drive. You can sort of think of it that way. So that process happens during sleep as well. And also, I think this is undervalued, emotional processing. That's what happens during dreams. There's been fascinating research showing us what is happening during dreams in the brain, and it is emotional processing. So when they do studies comparing people who've been through a trauma and how they recover over the following year, the people who dream, who have more REM sleep is dream sleep, they get better. The people who are not sleeping, they tend to not get better. So
and that's a study, and I've seen, because I was one of those people. I had significant trauma after our son was born, because he was born as a super preemie, and there was months of that was not a fun time.
Imagine.
And it was really interesting because the nights after the birth, which was like crazy trauma season, so to say, right? I had crazy dreams. It was insane. And then that completely went away. I did not dream for probably a year.
Wow.
I had what I would have, in retrospect, like how it felt there was exhaustion and deep sleep, which I never tracked. It was probably a disaster. There was probably no deep sleep. How I ended up after a year. And by the time I started actually processing the trauma with help, was when the dreaming came back.
Oh,
And
wow.
then it went really, and then it was all over the place. Then I'm like, why am I dreaming stuff from like 2 years ago? And I was working with this like psychologist at the time. He's like, yeah, no, this is all good. Don't be scared. Trust the process. Go with it. Maybe even journal on it and stuff. But your brain's like trying to catch up now with everything that it just didn't process. And I didn't dream. It's the weirdest, and that is just, and these studies come from, it's the weirdest feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you really, you've been through it. You've
I've been through
experienced
it.
this on a personal
Yeah,
level.
I didn't get any sleeping meds at that time. I was never offered any medication, which in retrospect, I'm personally grateful for, because I don't actually think I needed them. But yeah, I can totally relate to not sleeping, because that was one of my things. I was like up every night for hours, which then, talking about the emotional regulation, you feel that the next day. And we know it from kids, right? Toddlers, if they don't sleep, you're like, oh my God, another temper tantrum. And it's just because you didn't have your nap. And we are the exact same. I find we're just a bit more emotionally mature to word and not throw a complete temper tantrum. But
Right.
you're so easily triggered if you didn't get enough sleep. You just have no patience with others, right? It's already showing very
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think, from your perspective as a neurologist, what do you think causes insomnia? And how can we then solve it if a sleeping pill often isn't the solution? Long term isn't the solution for sure.
Modern life. I think modern life causes insomnia.
Yeah.
Um, but in addition to all of the bad sleep hygiene that is promoted by our culture, I think anxiety can be a significant issue. Unresolved trauma from the past can be a significant issue. Pain can
Yeah.
be a significant issue. And what happens is, the brain reacts to the world that you create for your brain. Now, I know people think of that otherwise. They think, oh, I'm wired like this, therefore that's how I am. It's actually the reverse. Your brain is the result of all of the choices you've ever made. Yes, there's a genetic fundamental starting point, but where you are now is the result of your habits. So if you have spent years staying up too late, getting up too early, thinking you don't need sleep, you're just one of those people, you're wired that way, you don't need sleep. If you have been, taking stimulants during the day, if you have super stressful things going on in your life, if you have job demands, if you work shifts, there are so many ways that the sleep circuits in your brain can become disconnected from how we are fundamentally wired, which is, day night. Light is the most powerful regulator of our sleep cycle, bar none. So, but we can become very disconnected to that. And as a result of, small choices every day over time, we can have brains that are wired in ways that make it difficult to sleep. Now, that's fixable. You can rewire your brain. You can make different choices. But it is hard. I'm going to acknowledge that those are not easy habits to fix. You might knock yourself out with your sleep hygiene, buying the blackout shades and the blue blocker glass, I don't know, whatever the supplements, whatever you decide to do, and feel like you're getting nowhere for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And it's really hard to sustain changes when you don't see immediate results in terms of how you feel. And there are so many reasons that can happen, but I think that those are a lot of the reasons that we're ending up with this epidemic of sleep problems that we're facing as a society.
I agree. I agree. And then sometimes we get into this complete, it works for a while until it doesn't. So like in my 20s, I went like type A, go, 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 work like crazy, exercise insanely, sleep well. I did. I think it was from exhaustion mostly. And then eventually that flipped. And yes, the trauma and stuff had something to do with that, and pregnancy and hormones might have also had something to, but it's this, the body doesn't do well on chronic stress for
Right.
extended periods of time. Like there comes a point where your body's like, nah, like
Mhm.
I waved so many flags at you, thank you for ignoring them, I'm shutting down. And that was basically where I ended, where it's like, and then you're so brutally exhausted and you're still
Mhm.
not sleeping. And then you start thinking you're going insane.
Mhm.
Because you not just do you have all the symptoms, the brain fog, the anxiety comes because you didn't get emotionally regulated, the panic attacks kick in. And then people just tell you you have stress, and you're like, nah, I'm just helpless now because my body seems to have completely forgotten exactly what you did. The sleep wake cycle is gone. It's
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is a very, very tough place to be.
And how would you say people can deal with that? I think you mentioned one thing, like one thing, the light darkness is something that you mentioned that at least I work on with clients a lot. Like we need to reset your sleep wake cycle. And that will not happen from today to tomorrow. While a sleeping pill might knock you out that night, that one day of light exposure and blue blockers is likely not gonna have that same effect that quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the solution needs to be very individualized because I think that anybody who's been in that situation has tried to solve the problem. They've probably implemented a few things, but I don't know if you see this in the people that you work with, but I do. I feel like people have blocks. There are things that they can't see that are impacting their recovery that other people can see. People like you and I who've worked with lots of people who have sleep problems, we can listen to them talk for 2 minutes and think, oh, that's the problem. And so that's one piece of it, is figuring out, which of the 30 or 40 different things that go into quality sleep this person is not seeing. And I find so many times too, even when you know what the answer is, even if you tell them, they've got a million defenses. Oh no, it's not that. I tried that. Oh no, it's not that. I'm not wired that way. Oh no, I don't need, like, they've got a million things that they're telling themselves, and it takes a long time to dismantle their own blocks that are getting in the way of them healing. So boy, I'm not sure that there's a blanket answer. I think that there are generalities that work, like you were saying about resetting sleep cycles. Absolutely. Morning light exposure. Get out there, get your 10 minutes, which is super difficult in certain parts of the globe, right? But the more you can do to reset your morning, your day-night cycle with that morning light cycle, super powerful. But there are many other things that can be done as well. And I think it's individualized, which is why people need people like you to coach them through this, because you can see the blocks that they're not able to see.
I agree. And while stress, and we talked about this before we hit record, to me, yes, stress is the cause of insomnia and sleep struggles and burnout. Yeah, it is. And your doctor sometimes says that. And then it gets so frustrating because you're like, well, hey, what am I supposed to do? Because I have to take care of my children. My parents are aging. My boss is stepping on my toes. Like, yeah. And stress is not just the one that you feel, where you're like, my heart rate's going up, I'm starting to sweat, like that is, I'm go, go, go. There can be mental stresses, there can be physical underlying things. You talked about pain. Pain is a huge stressor and can be hugely interfering with sleep, right? There's gut health, there's hormones, it's all kinds of things. So it is a puzzle, and I totally agree with you. The puzzle is very individual for each person, and thus the solution can be very very different. But you were talking about one more thing, and if we have another minute, I would love to talk to you about that, because you're a neurologist and I would like to have your assessment on that. Sleep tracking devices. Like I've said, like I sometimes use them with clients, I sometimes don't, because depending on how objectively you can look at the data, I think it can be great. If it is something where you every morning wake up, you look at the thing and it freaks you out that your deep sleep didn't go up, I think it can get counterproductive. But how, and I know they're not the gold standard because they're not a sleep lab. Like we're not being hooked up with our brain and our heart rate to machinery in a hospital or in a sleep clinic. But how accurate are they? Where do you draw lines and say, this is a boundary, this is where I wouldn't over analyze, or how good do you think they are?
I think they're pretty good. And I use them not so much to measure success or failure, but as a tool to give you insight into what went on during that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours that you were out of it. Because here's what happens, at least with me, and I think with a lot of my patients. So I do a lot of genetic testing with people to help them understand just your starting point in your body and where your body needs help and where you don't have to spend as much time and energy because your body's handling that. Okay. So my sleep genes are kind of meh, they're not great. And I decided, all right, I'm going to work on my sleep. I'm going to take some melatonin. I'm going to do all the things. And so I do this and I'm like, no, I'm not sure I really feel any different. Do I feel more refreshed this morning? I don't know. But I, tracked my deep sleep for a long time before I started these interventions. And then, for a week, I did an extended release melatonin, 3 milligrams, small dose, extended release to get you through the whole night.
Yep.
As we get older, our melatonin levels drop off. So I thought, what, let's just push it back up to where it used to be when I was younger. Let's see how that works. And there's great data on melatonin. There's a recent meta-analysis of 23 different randomized controlled trials showing that melatonin works. So I know there are some of you out there rolling your eyes like, I tried melatonin, it didn't do anything for me. And I hear you, because I had a similar perspective. Like, I don't know if this is helping or not. Should I waste my time? I know that the science is there, but is it helping for me and my body? So what happened is I went back and looked at my deep sleep data, took the average of how many minutes of deep sleep I got that week taking the melatonin. I was getting twice as much, twice as much deep sleep. I never would have known that if I hadn't been tracking my sleep. I would be taking it based on my own subjective experience, thinking, I don't know, is this really worth the money? Do you know what I mean? And I might have given up on something that was actually helping me quite a bit. So I like that as the niche for monitoring your sleep, because it just tells you what is actually helping you and you may not know it, and what isn't helping you, what's a waste of your time and money.
Absolutely. And I think there are some now that do measure oxygen.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that is not to be underestimated with sleep apnea.
Oh,
Because
really,
so
really
many
good
people
point.
don't know they have it. So many people go undiagnosed. And those trackers sometimes can show a lack of oxygen, or like really low levels that we would be like, no, this is technically too low, right? And yeah, could it be an error? But it gives you an indication to maybe go talk to your doctor and say, you know what, this is what the data is showing. Can we make sure?
Yeah, 100% agree. Really good point. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else we have to talk about when it comes to sleep meds, or when it comes to sleep? Anything where you're like, this is really important for people to know, something I'd like to share from your background?
I think we covered all the big points. I think really the biggest hurdle is probably something that most of your audience has already overcome, is just acknowledging how important sleep is, not, believing this myth out there that some people are just wired that way, that they feel fine on 5 hours of sleep a night. That's just straight up false. And so I really support all of your listeners for making it a priority, trying to figure this out for themselves. That's the most important part.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if people want to learn more about you, find out more about you, where can they find you?
My website, ameliascottbarrettmd.com.
Awesome. And we will link to that in the show notes. Great. And is there anything, I think you had a gift you wanted to share with the audience.
I do. So I agree with you that stress is one of the biggest problems that we're facing, both in terms of sleep and in terms of the impact on our health. I think that modern life is incredibly stressful. And so what I did to try to help people understand the physical impact of chronic stress on their body is I wrote an ebook that outlines the symptoms that you get in different stages of the stress response in your body, just to really help people understand that, that can happen, that stress can impact your body physically. And instead of taking a pill for your headaches, a pill for your brain fog, a pill for your insomnia, a pill for your mood swings, maybe you just take a step back and fix the stress. And that there are ways you can do that, that don't require medications, that involve true healing, that are far more effective and long-lasting solutions for those sorts of problems. So I wrote an ebook about that, totally free, and I would love to give that away to your audience. You can get a copy of that at migrainereliefcode.com/stress detector. I call it the
Awesome.
stress detector because it's helping you detect the footprints of stress in your body with your symptoms.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having been here. Thank you so much for all you do for your patients, because I think if like whoever gets to work with you has just amazing support on their healing journey.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure having you.
Yes, so nice to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening. And we will be back with another episode shortly.